Mr. Biplav Chowdhury, Technical Representative and Head of Qatar's Office for the United Nations Development Programme, thank you so much for joining this conversation with the Peninsula. Now let's start talking about the relationship between the UNDP and Qatar, since they have had years of partnership. How significant do you think is a strategic partnership between a Middle Eastern country like Qatar and the organization itself?
Thank you, Mr. Joel, to you and to the Peninsula team for having me. This is a great question. But before I respond to your question, please allow me to take a step back and take a look at the world that we are living in. What we notice is that the world has been lurching from one devastating crisis to another. We all know about the climate change impacts and the planetary emergency. We've recently come out of the COVID-19 pandemic and the war in Ukraine. And more recently, we've seen the massive earthquakes that have struck Turkey and Syria, causing one of the biggest disasters to impact the region in recent times. Now, all these devastating crises are grim reminders that we're getting trapped in a cycle of firefighting and are unable to focus adequately on the root causes of the issues that we face. As the Human Development Report, which is brought out by the United Nations Development Programme, has highlighted, these multiple crises cumulatively have halted progress in 9 out of 10 countries. These countries have fallen backwards in human development. The Human Development Index, which has been developed by UNDP and was measuring a nation's health, education, and standard of living since 1990, has for the very first time declined consecutively and globally for 2 years in a row. And it has wiped off development gains since 2016. So when we look at these crises and when we look at the impact of these crises, we realize that multilateral cooperation will be absolutely vital in addressing some of these shared common challenges. The Sustainable Development Goals and the Paris Agreement, they bring clarity of purpose to this very complex and uncertain, rapidly evolving landscape. The future is challenging, but it is not preordained, and it is for the global community and us as citizens to choose. As the United Nations lead development agency, the United Nations Development Programme plays a critical role in helping member states to reduce poverty, to protect the planet, and to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. Let us now talk about the state of Qatar, which has emerged as a very influential champion of multilateralism and to the Agenda 2030 for Sustainable Development as a force for global public good under the visionary leadership of His Highness Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, the Amir of Qatar, and His Excellency Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdul Rahman Al Thani, the Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs of the State of Qatar. As a champion of multilateralism, Qatar has very successfully created extremely influential multi-stakeholder platforms, whether you look at the signature events of the Doha Forum, or the Qatar Economic Forum, or the Global Security Forum. Most recently, Qatar hosted the 5th United Nations Conference on Least Developed Countries in Doha, which saw the participation of an amazing over 9,000 people here, which comprised the world leaders, influencers, development partners, private sector, and civil society, all looking for sustainable solutions to challenges in least developed countries, but indeed which are all globally interconnected. On the sidelines of the LDC5, the UN family and the state of Qatar, we reached a very important milestone with the inauguration of the UN House and the UNDP office herein. And I would really like to acknowledge and thank the dynamic leadership of Her Excellency Ambassador Sheikha Alia bint Ahmed Al Thani, who is the permanent representative of Qatar to the United Nations based in New York, and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So when you bring in Qatar as a champion of multilateralism and the United Nations Development Agency, it becomes a very unique partnership. It becomes a very strategic partnership. It becomes a very consequential partnership, and it becomes a very transformative partnership. So the partnership with UNDP is led by the State of Qatar, which is represented by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Qatar Fund for Development, along with national strategic partners such as Education Above All and Silatech. We are deeply grateful to the State of Qatar as our leading new strategic partner for co-investing in UNDP's core resources through UNDP's global network of 170 countries and accompanying in the implementation of UNDP's new strategic plan, while benefiting hundreds of millions of people escape multidimensional poverty, gain access to renewable energy, and unlock sustainable development finance, whether it's through the private sector or through the public sector. UNDP has been working with the Qatar Fund for Development in a very unique and multifaceted manner. We have partnerships with the Qatar Fund for Development from Yemen to Afghanistan, especially on UNDP's crisis offer, which is focused on breaking the cycle of fragility in protracted conflict contexts and getting ahead of the crisis curve. We, as collectively as international organizations, need to better prevent and anticipate these types of risks and help the local communities sustain development pathways and invest in hope in times of crisis. And with Qatar Fund for Development, these are some of the partnerships which are taking shape. The partnership with the State of Qatar and with Qatar Fund for Development is going to be more and more significant for UNDP. It is truly about the future of development and supporting countries to attain the Sustainable Development Goals. Let me take this opportunity to thank the entire team of Qatar Fund for Development under the visionary leadership of Director General His Excellency Khalifa bin Jassim Al Kuwari for this important partnership. With Qatar Fund for Development, we've been working in diverse contexts, from Yemen, where the world is in a race to prevent the oil spill in the Red Sea, to Afghanistan, where we're working with local communities to break the cycle of poverty and fragility while rebuilding livelihoods, the local economy, the small businesses, including with the focus on women. But UNDP is particularly proud about its unique and celebrated partnership on the Accelerator Labs with the Qatar Fund for Development and the State of Qatar, which alongside Germany has been a co-investor and has accompanied the remarkable journey of the Accelerator Labs, which have been rolled out in 91 locations, support 115 countries. And all of this has been done in less than 3 years. Another important highlight of this partnership is the recently launched Women in Conflict Zones initiative, which was launched in September of 2022 on the sidelines of the General Assembly. The Women in Conflict Zones, it aims to fill critical gaps and respond to women's and girls' needs in crisis and empowering them as positive change agents and peace builders. These Accelerator Labs are focused on the very frontier of innovation and on new ways of doing development. These labs are making the argument that local innovators hold the knowledge to address some of the world's toughest development challenges. These labs are advocating for policymakers to learn from them to make progress on sustainable development goals. And you will be interested to know that the UNDP's Accelerator Labs have successfully identified more than 3,000 grassroots solutions on SDGs, often by women and young people. UNDP works with countries to expand people's choices for a fairer, sustainable future, to build the world envisioned by the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development with people and planet in balance. The challenge for UNDP and the world over the next 4 years at least is to accelerate and scale up development results significantly, bringing the Sustainable Development Goals within reach. Towards that end, UNDP will support changes in 3 directions. One is on structural transformation, the second is on leaving no one behind, and the third is on building resilience. In our strategic plan, over the next 4 years, UNDP is committed to working with countries to expand the human capabilities through which 100 million people can escape multidimensional poverty. We can support access to clean energy for 500 million people and promote the investment of over $1 trillion of public expenditure and private capital in the Sustainable Development Goals. The 5th United Nations Conference on Least Developed Countries ended with a historic adoption of the Doha Political Declaration. The declaration highlights 5 key deliverables from the Doha Programme of Action, namely an online university, second, a graduation support package, third, a food stock holding solution, fourth, an investment support center, and fifth, a crisis mitigation and resilience building mechanism. The overarching message from the LDC 5 was that LDCs need massive financing at scale and directed to where it matters most. This was said by the Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations at the closing plenary meeting. These calls for massive financing by the United Nations Secretary General, by the Deputy Secretary General, were also echoed by the UNDP Administrator, Mr. Achim Steiner, and who has called for urgent solutions to the international financial architecture alongside an SDG stimulus of at least $500 billion a year as key to the success of the implementation of the Doha Programme of Action. It was very encouraging to see that financial commitments of more than $1.3 billion were made in the form of donations, investments, loans, and technical support by several partners, including Qatar, European Commission, Canada, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Green Climate Fund, and so on and so forth. Qatar also announced as a generous host a financial package of $60 million, including $10 million to support the implementation of the Doha Program of Action and $50 million to help build resilience in least developed countries. The UNDP administrator has made 3 important commitments towards implementation of the Doha Program of Action. The first commitment is on energy and climate action. UNDP is rolling out the Africa Mini-Grids program to connect 21 countries in Africa to renewable energy. This includes 19 LDCs. This represents a $65 billion investment opportunity to connect 265 million people, 200,000 plus schools and clinics, and 900,000 plus businesses to clean and affordable energy. The second commitment is on digitalization and innovation. UNDP has committed to development of inclusive and human rights-based digital public infrastructure, including digital IDs to improve access to essential public services in 25 LDCs. We will continue to provide support, including young people, women, and NGOs to surface and scale up grassroots solutions through the Accelerator Labs network, about which I spoke, which cover 80% of the LDCs. The third important commitment that UNDP has made is on helping LDCs to unlock meaningful new sources of SDG finance, including through leveraging the integrated national financing frameworks, which are currently either under development or in use in 32 LDCs, and also incentivizing the UNDP's private sector networks to make strategic investments across the LDCs. We want to be able to enhance the LDC's capabilities to raise tax revenues through the OECD Tax Inspectors Without Borders initiative, and roll out insurance solutions to 20 LDCs by 2025 with the support of the insurance and risk finance facilities. In 2023, we'll be working on identifying and implementing the next frontiers of our development cooperation between UNDP and the state of Qatar. We have 4 top priorities. Number 1, we're looking at scaling up solutions, the innovative solutions which are coming out of our Accelerator Labs. Number 2, we're going to be partnering with a range of Qatari institutions to see how we can scale up renewable energy solutions in Africa and rest of the world. Number 3, we're looking at how we can focus on building community resilience and food security systems in vulnerable countries. And number 4, we're looking at how we can potentially unlock sustainable development goals related financing through the private sector and the public sector, and some innovative combination of the two.